Hello. Well, today I'm going to be engaging in a difficult topic, I suppose, but it's mainly Bible study type of topic, and it is one of those regarding one of the books that is kind of hard to make sense of it, and the one book that a lot of people have different opinions on, or different interpretations, different takes, and some people don't get to actually hear it in mass, in church, and sometimes people hesitate to read it. Oddly enough, it was one of the very first books that I began to read when I started reading the Bible. So, what am I talking about? Talking about the book of Revelation, right? It's supposed to be an instruction manual-ish, clarification for the Christian-ish, prophecy-ish, supposed to reveal a pattern of what the kingdom of heaven is-ish, how things work in the world and in the spiritual realm-ish. Again, it depends on who you ask. So, where do I begin? Well, I'm going to try to make this somewhat of a short video. So, I guess I'll begin with... so, where do I begin? So, let me begin with Ephesians 6. Verse 10 to 12 is where we we get clarification as far as the spiritual forces that dominate Earth, right? The influence. So here, let me just, so I'm going to pull up a verse here, Ephesians 6, and it's going to be not fancy. It's even going to block my face, but so be it. Here it is, Ephesians 6. Nope, that's not it. This one's it. All right, so let's begin with. So let's get started from 10. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. Why? Right. So let's keep going. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand. Now, when I read this, I've read this several times, and it kind of it gives me information, but it also gives me more questions as well. So, in the evil day, is that talking to a specific time frame, or is it at time of temptation, or is it talking about at a time of our worst temptation? What exactly is it talking about in the evil day? Well, you saw the other verse in Psalm 82. I'm a big fan of Michael Heiser. He passed away several years back, but there are some people that are familiar with his work. He wrote several books. I have some of those on audio version. The Unseen Realm is the one that comes to mind. And he does mention, he did do several videos on his interpretation on Psalms 82 about the divine counsel. So let me pull up that verse as well to try to get some background information, and then I'm going to go into Revelation. And like I said, it's going to be a short video, so here we go. I'll try to speed through it. So here's Psalm 82. God stands in the congregation of the mighty. He judges among the gods. How long will you unjustly and show, how long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Now that, I don't really know who's asking the question. Is it God that's asking this question to the congregation of the mighty? Right? He judges among gods, or is the congregation asking God? Or somebody else? See, that I don't really know. I know that there's a lot of people that have talked about it. Michael Heiser has mentioned quite a bit on it. Well, let's finish it up. Let's do 3 and 4. Defend the poor. So here's a kind of like a juxtaposition, I guess, right? Defend the poor and the fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Free them from the hand of the wicked. All right, so I guess that's we know who does. We can fast forward. I guess this is something that was written before Christ. There's several mentions of the Messiah, and once you start learning about Christianity and who Christ is, He is the deliverer, right? Delivers us from sin, delivers us from ultimate death, and we are no longer slaves of sin. We're now servants or slaves of God, right? So, but He judges among the gods with a small g, right? Is He, and right? So is this, who is this mighty congregation, right? Earlier we just read about the spiritual forces, in Ephesians 6 about the powers and principalities that influence us. But okay, so how does it actually play out here on earth, right? So the influence, so I'm going to try to be quick about it. So let me go up to, where is this one? So in Revelation 20, is this the one that I'm thinking about? Let me see here. So let's in verse 2, so he laid hold of the dragon. Now in Revelation we get told who the dragon is. That serpent of old, here we are. Who is he? The serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan. And well, it looks like an angel came down and he bound him for 1,000 years, and he cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up. So I guess no one's able to hear him, right? He's bound for 1,000 years. So here clearly we get told who that serpent of old, who is the devil, otherwise also known as Satan as well. The serpent of old, we are introduced of that serpent in the garden. And I mentioned this in some of my other videos. The way it plays out with Adam and Eve, with Eve specifically, right? Because the serpent talks to Eve first, or just Eve, I think, from what I gathered. And it wasn't that the serpent tackled Eve and, after a lot of physical abuse and torment, she's like, okay, I'll do what you're suggesting, right? I'll eat from the apple, from the tree of right and wrong, right? That's not the way it played out. The serpent caused, so with his words, with his different ideas that contradict the word of God, right? So it brings in this idea, this notion, and it is that causes her to doubt. Now she is told two different versions, so someone's lying. And it's a moment of truth, I suppose. Remember a few verses before, a little bit ago, in that evil day. Now, I don't know if those days come more often than not, or if they're specific in a specific time frame or age or whatnot. But she is questioning what God said based on what the serpent said, and that's where it all began, with the doubt, uncertainty. And now, who are we going to trust? Who's telling us the truth? So, let me go back here. Here, we're told that he's bound by 1,000 years. Now, I'm assuming that because this was, the book of Revelation is close to 2,000 years old. So there's a lot of generations, a lot of people that have read these passages throughout history. And, is this currently going on? Is this in the future? Is this the people that receive the Holy Spirit and the devil's no longer reigning? He can no longer have influence over us if we don't submit, I guess, to his persuasion. If we don't, right? Different people have different ideas of what that might mean, but this particular notion, or whatever is trying to imply, that this time an angel comes down and binds him, and he is shut up, so he's not able to communicate. It's the impression I get, for 1,000 years, for a time frame. And I don't want to get into the millennium, because there's some people that do believe in the millennium, all millennium and all that stuff. That's a longer video, and that's for a different conversation, for a different topic, for another day. So, spiritual forces, mighty, powerful entities in the spiritual realm, and the mighty, that serpent, this the devil, Satan, whatever you want to call it, what is described in the book of Revelation. He started his deception from day one at the garden for mankind by creating doubt, by bringing up a different notion, different perception, and we have the freedom of choice, right? Adam and Eve, they got to choose. It's not any different today. We still get to choose. So, but that still doesn't tell us how those different forces of influence, how does that play out here? So let me go. Is this okay? So this one. So in Revelation 13 mentions two beasts. So in Revelation also talks about the false prophet, talks about what we seem to think is the Antichrist. It mentions, the number, the 666, the number of a man, and all this. But so in 13, let me start from verse 1. Then I stood on the sand. So then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his head a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. Okay, so it's describing the beast, but what I'm saying is this beast comes out of the sea. Let me fast forward, because I highlighted that in pink in verse 2. Notice where it says the dragon gave him his power, his throne, his great authority. So this beast is on the sea. So this beast is no longer in the heavenly realms. It's here on earth, in the sea, and he does have power, influence, persuasion, whatever that means, whatever those words are communicating, right? So the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. And so it describes, the the crowns, his heads, and all that stuff. So how much control, how much territory is he going to have, that kind of thing. Is it a kingdom? Is it several kingdoms? Is it a continent? All that stuff, right? But it does mention about, so let me just read it. Let's see, verse 3. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world marveled and followed the beast. So there it is. First notion of people following after the beast. So they worship the dragon. We are told already who the dragon is. Make note of that. The world marvels after this beast that has authority and power from the dragon. And so they worship the dragon who gave authority to the beast. And they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him? Now, we do have, so like I said, people have been reading this for many years, centuries, I might add. And we have the luck of, not in its entirety, but not the bishop of, so not Polycarp, because Polycarp got to meet the Apostle John. John is the one that lived the longest, because every other apostle was martyred. John almost was martyred. He survived. They put him in the island of Patmos, right, as a prisoner. But he did get to influence Polycarp. Polycarp was also martyred, but he was able to influence the Bishop of Lyons. I don't speak French, but Lyons, Lyons. Irenaeus, the Bishop Irenaeus, and he did write several letters, and I think he wrote a book, 5 books, something like that, on it was the interpretation of it was here on heresies, but he does mention what his take is, because he seems to think it was the 666. He seems to think that it was Nero Caesar. Now, that's a different emperor from even when 70 AD, when Jerusalem was, when the temple was torn down and all that kind of stuff. So, different emperors. But anyways, just what I'm saying is, people, different time frames were reading it, and they were trying to see how might it look like in real life, these powerful entities, and how they influence people, right? And in chapter 17, it also mentions Revelation 17. It also mentions the great harlot, mystery Babylon, right? And writes on the beast. So it's not the beast, but writes on the beast. And the implication from what some people say is that it is false religions, like only false worship and whatnot. So I know that this is, I like I said, I'm just a lay person, so I don't have, it's just my personal opinion based on what I heard in different Bible studies and from different pastors and whatnot, priests, and I know everybody has a different take, and especially when it mentions, the millennium and all that kind of stuff, and pre-trib, post-trib, no-trib, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of different ideas out there, I understand. But how does it get played out? So, in real life, it seems, okay, so if you allow me for, 10-minute rant, I'll try to keep it short. In real life, how might it get played? Okay, so we know that the way that it all started from the serpent in the garden was by creating doubt, by saying something that contradicts what God has said, and then, right, so that bringing doubt, because, I already have gray hair, but even though I was born into Catholicism, my parents never really read the Bible to me. I never seen them read the Bible for themselves. As a matter of fact, I mentioned in my earlier videos, I don't have many, by the way, very small channel. In case you are the 1 person, 2 people that stumble into this. I remember going to church once when I was little, and I remember being scared of the crucifix. It was a big crucifix, bigger than a person, I think. And the image was, I didn't know what to make of it. It was scary to me. So that's what I remember. So I understand that when you begin to ponder these things, I didn't know where to start. I just knew that I was very flawed and I was broken because I was, crashed and burned many a times. But I already have gray hair. So what is the takeaway? So what would I want to share with my kids if so at least here is recorded. So I did tell them, I have done some writings and I tell them, if I happen to get hit by a car or whatnot, just remember the conversations we had. I've written down a bunch of stuff. Just, you can go through my journals. I did publish a poetry book back in 2005. That's already out of print because, small little independent self-published thing. But I kept a few copies. I think I'm down to like 2 or 3. And I told them, just go, read them if you want to. If I'm gone, at least you'll be able to hear some of those thoughts that I might get to convey, or maybe not. And here I'm doing the same thing, recording these things, putting it into the ether. And it helps to talk about it. So I'm rambling, so let me get to it. So I struggled, and let me shift here a little bit. So where do I start? Okay, so I find myself broken many a times when I was young, trying to figure out, how did I get here, right? How did I get to the point where I fell so far, being stuck in a pit, right? We're all broken. I'm broken. I've figured that, come to the conclusion that I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. My parents are not perfect. My siblings are not perfect. My grandparents were never perfect. Every person I encounter is not perfect. So none of us are perfect. And we're all born into this world, and we're all trying to make sense of it when we get the notion at early adulthood, somewhere around there. Some of us sooner, some of us later. Maybe early 20s, late 20s, some maybe even late 30s, give or take. But, as we find ourselves broken due to shame or guilt or regret, or being overwhelmed with insecurity, anxiety, fear, doubt, just in the state of brokenness, that's when we begin to ponder, what is this all about, right? What is the meaning of life? Is there a God? And if there is a God, how would he, right, if he was to talk to us, convey to us something, how would he go about it? Well, I don't, a lot of questions, but when I was struggling, I did get into philosophy, and from philosophy I ran into Buddhism, which is a different philosophy. Now, the Buddhists, they don't believe in God, they don't believe in hell, they don't believe in angels. And then I ran into Christianity, and it took me a while to submit to Christ. And I was hesitant. I was kind of running away from him, from God, from Christianity. the Trinity for the Apostles' Creed. That's what I believe now. And but we all, well, I shouldn't say all of us, some of us do have these moments of where we pause. We're so broken, or something happens in our life where we just have to yield and go over it and start to ponder. But anyways, so I have gray hair, so I'm going to fast forward of where am I at now. So I come to the conclusion that there is a God, and there are spiritual forces that are powerful, and they do influence people, and people are influenced, and it takes a world of, to make the long story short, this battle of ideas that cause doubt and that cause people to believe in one thing or another, in this camp or that camp, right? Atheists or not, and if there's different religions, and in the world of Christianity, there's still different camps. So there's, and I'm going to go with the majority. So Catholicism, Orthodoxy, or Protestantism, and in Protestantism, because there is different, within Protestantism, there's different points of view, I guess, Calvinist, non-Calvinist, you name it. So obviously it takes a while to go through these and to try to make sense of all this, but to go back to so if I'm being influenced and I don't realize, so directly and indirectly, I know I'm being influenced, right? So I'll put this question, right? Because this question was asked in some way, shape, or form, directly or indirectly, and you probably experienced this yourself in a different form. But early on, I think when I was a teenager, it's like what it is to be cool, to be in the crowd, in the popular crowd, and to be, what does it mean to be not in the crowd, right? To not be cool. And when I was young, it had to do with whatever was popular. So, right? Maybe a popular movie star, maybe a popular rap star, rock band, whatever they thought was, whatever the videos, whatever, or in the movie, whatever this character in the movie, whatever, that is really cool, right? As a gullible teenager, ooh, I want to be like that, right? So no longer what my parents wanted me to be like, but more like, no, right? So, or, maybe some of you really did think that it's best to, and it is, your parents are cool, and maybe it's cool to be like them if they're, I don't know, everybody experiences differently, but what was your first notion of trying to be in the popular crowd? What made them popular? And if you weren't I wasn't, I was struggling. Crashed and burned many a time. So what would it mean to not be in the popular crowd? And what does it mean to be in the popular crowd? Now, there's 8 billion of us now. Would you say that the majority think it's cool to be Christian? I would say not. So there you go. So we're being influenced, as the majority of us don't want to consider becoming a Christian, because we are not going to be in the popular crowd. We're not going to be in that in-group. So, and we don't have the ability to, I think it was Paul Vanderklay, PVK, mentioned that we're pulled into the future when we start reading the scriptures, right? Because they were written thousands of years ago, and unfortunately we don't have the ability to travel into the past, to the present, to the future, and we don't have the ability. We can look in our past and try to make sense of it. We can read the scriptures, and it gives us a glimpse of how those people lived. We can read the early church fathers like, Ignatius, Polycarp, Irenaeus. I think those are the three that I mentioned. There's Clement and there's all these other ones. But the earliest Christians, aside from the apostles. But before I continue, I'll say I come to the conclusion that if I'm going to trust someone, because I did like Buddhism for a while, but my number one for sure is Christ, and I can trust him, the way he lived, everything about him. I can trust the apostles. They were martyred. I guess the Apostle John is the exception, but he did suffer, so it's not like they didn't try to kill him. And the early church fathers were also martyred, so I can say, hey, I can trust them. So going back along the side, right? So being influenced some way, shape, or form, but when I find myself broken because of shame of the stuff that I'd done, because I didn't know any better, and guilt and regret, insecurity and fear and doubt, like I mentioned, and now I'm battling with intrusive thoughts or raceless thoughts or all these fears or whatnot, or imagining, so maladaptive coping strategies. So I'm trying to cope with all this inner turmoil, and then our emotions, right? Overwhelming emotions, whether it's depression, whether it's anger, whether it's fear, you name it. We're capable of feeling all those emotions, but we can be what they call poor emotional regulation, having poor impulse control, having a poor locus of control. And you can see how, like me, I struggled a lot when I was a teenager. I mentioned the reason why my earlier videos, but I did had poor coping skills. Long story short, I rambled on, so I'll try to finish it up here. Having poor stress intolerance, right? The inability to have patience, to wait, our inability to tolerate stress. And what we're told, you only live once, right? Enjoy today because tomorrow is gone, and if there's no God, why not do whatever? Why not try to get away with as much as you want, right? Live his life to the fullest, right? And then if you think that there is no God, then it's all for nothing, especially if you're suffering with this endless torment. Then you go down the avenue of nihilism. And before you know it, you find yourself in isolation, with cognitive dissonance, with these deep-rooted notions of illogical distortions or whatnot, where you see the world in whatever we are told by Hollywood, by the rap artists, by the popular artists, by the rock bands, by even so, there's some people that are really into sports, so they do have like their, what do they call them, the people that they look up to, right, that they're influenced by. If they're into sports, is whomever is the famous football player, the famous basketball player, you name it, right, Olympian, and they are, they want to be like them. So we are influenced, whether we like to admit it or not, right? So we begin to have doubts. What is real? Is there a God? Is Christ real? Can we trust him? So, anyways, there is a warning, I guess, that even in Christian circles, because once you begin to, sorry, that's my spammer and my stomach rumbling. Anyways, when you begin to get into the Christian circles, and there is a word of caution because not everybody has good intentions, and not everybody is a Christian. There are some people that do want to take advantage, and the Christians do tend to be a little bit vulnerable, and might even say gullible, and they could be easy pickings, whatever, however you say that. So you do have to be careful, especially, but there are some genuine Christian people out there, and they, like I said, they do want to mentor. They do. There is something good when you get into a fellowship, when you begin to go to church, and but Jesus did say, "By the fruit you will know them." And be careful. Take your time. Don't rush into things. But do, like I said, when you do begin to, especially when you start having Bible studies into the small groups, just be careful, because some people do want to take advantage of people. Because there's a reason why people fear to be vulnerable, right? Because when you begin to have a friendship or in a relationship, both of those, whether you're dating or whether, when you begin to have best friends, especially if you move out of town, you have to have new friends. That there's it's not as easy to get new friends and to be vulnerable and to because there is a price to pay when you get into a friendship and a relationship, because they do demand something from you, right? And you have to let them into your life, your weaknesses, your fears, you do tell them your goals, your what you think and how you feel. So you do become vulnerable, and some people can use that and manipulate you. So there is a word of caution. So, but anyways, I think I want to leave that there, because the more I read the scriptures, the more I listen to podcasts, the more I listen to Bible studies, the more I attend Bible studies, the more I go to church, I do learn, but I'm also, new questions arise. There's a lot to know. But anyways, if you're bold enough, leave a comment. The handle is De Sol a Sol. I'm Alex Luna. And the Book of Revelation is the first book that I started reading years back, and I didn't know what to make of it. And I moved on to other books, but every now and then, you end up going back to the Book of Revelation. If you start cycling through, you're bound to run into it again. But there are some churches that do hesitate to talk about the Book of Revelation, or about First and Second Thessalonians, because of that implication, right? And Ephesians in its entirety, because these are difficult conversations for some people. But anyways, I think I'm going to leave it at that, because I think it's becoming already a long video. But maybe I'll follow up later in some avenues as far as influence, and how we can be vulnerable and we can be tormented by our thoughts. And they do say that the devil is the accuser of the brethren, accusing us and having us doubt. But know that we are forgiven. Jesus saved us because we're unable to be perfect, because none of us are perfect. And it's a good thing that I don't have to be perfect to be saved. That He is now my master, and sin is no longer my master. And I do understand that you cannot serve two masters. They do say that the love of money is the root of all evil. And, Jesus gave us 2 commandments. And they all, all the law and the prophets, all that stuff, and, to summarize into those 2 commandments. Love God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul. What does that mean? Right? So who should we worship? What are we worshiping? What are we giving our time and attention? What are we all about day in, day out, year after year, decade after decade? are we worshiping God with all our hearts, all our mind, and all our soul? And then the second commandment, to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. So anyways, what do you think? Did I make sense of any of that? What are your thoughts? Leave a comment if you want to criticize, or if you thought that I made sense on certain things or not. Or if... Anyways, I don't get too many comments. It's a very small channel. It might end up collecting dust, but it is what it is. It's out of my control. But anyways, all right, I think I'll leave it there. Until next time. I'll see ya.